My name is Olivia Carter. I'm 28 years old, and for a long time, I believed I was the kind of woman who fixed broken things. Not the dramatic kind of fixing, not the kind that makes for exciting stories. I mean the quiet kind. The kind where you step into someone's life after the damage is already done, and you rebuild it piece by piece until it looks whole again. For 2 years, I thought I was the hero of Daniel's story. I thought I was the woman who came in after the storm, the one who patched the holes, reinforced the walls, and made everything safe again. But looking back now, I wasn't the hero. I was just the scaffolding. And once the building could stand on its own, I was removed. I met Daniel at the lowest point of his life. He was 26, drowning in credit card debt, emotionally wrecked, and still orbiting the aftermath of a 3-year on and off relationship with a woman named Tara. Tara was, how did he describe her? Electric. That was his word. She lights up every room she walks into. But what he didn't say, what I eventually learned, was that Tara also burned everything she touched. She borrowed money she never repaid. She cheated on him more times than he could count. She disappeared for days, then came back like nothing happened. And somehow, she always made him feel like he was the lucky one. So when she finally left him, for someone younger, flashier, easier, Daniel didn't just get dumped. He collapsed. That's when I walked into his life. I wasn't Tara. I didn't light up rooms. I didn't disappear for days or make grand entrances. I showed up every day, consistently, predictably, reliably. And at first, he loved that. "You're a breath of fresh air," he told me once, lying on my couch, his head in my lap. "I'm so tired of the chaos. I just want peace." So I gave him peace. I helped him sort through his finances, sat with him for hours, building spreadsheets, negotiating interest rates, consolidating debt. I co-signed his car loan so he wouldn't get trapped in some ridiculous 18% interest nightmare. When he decided to go back to school and finish his degree, I covered the rent entirely so he could focus on his classes. I didn't just love him. I supported him. I stabilized him. I became the structure his life rested on. And for a while, it worked. We built something that felt real, something steady. But there's a funny thing about peace. If you've spent your whole life addicted to chaos, peace starts to feel like suffocation. The shift didn't happen overnight. It never does. It started small, little comments. We'd be watching a movie and he'd sigh. "I wish we did things like that," he'd say. "Like what?" "Spontaneous stuff, last-minute trips, adventures. We went to Cabo last month," I'd remind him gently. "Yeah, but we planned it, Olivia," he'd reply, shaking his head. "It was on a spreadsheet. That's not the same." I'd laugh it off at first, tell myself he was just restless. But then it got more personal. "You sit at a desk all day," he said one night, watching me work on my laptop. "Don't you ever want to do something exciting?" "I build systems that keep hospitals running," I replied, trying to keep my tone light. He rolled his eyes. "You know what I mean? It's just so sterile." Sterile. That word stuck with me longer than I wanted to admit, because somewhere deep down, I knew what he was really saying. He wasn't bored with life. He was bored with me. Still, I ignored it. Because that's what you do when you love someone, right? You smooth over the cracks. You tell yourself it's temporary. You remind yourself of who they were when you met them. And Daniel, he had been broken when I found him. I told myself he was just healing. But healing doesn't make you resent the person who helped you. Healing doesn't make you look back at the thing that destroyed you and call it exciting. The real turning point came 6 months ago. Daniel graduated. He landed a solid job at a PR firm, started going to the gym more, dressing better, carrying himself differently. Confidence looks good on people, but sometimes it changes them. He started glowing in a way I hadn't seen before, and I was proud of him. I really was. I thought we were winning. I thought we had made it through the hardest part. But I didn't realize that I had only been part of his life when things were hard. And now that things were easy, he didn't need me the same way anymore. Or maybe he didn't want me at all. It all came to a head the week of his sister Emma's wedding. This wasn't just any wedding. Emma was marrying into one of those old money families. Country clubs, generational wealth. The kind of people who care more about appearances than reality. Daniel was the best man. And suddenly, everything mattered. Every detail, every impression, every person standing next to him. I assumed I was part of that image. I wanted to support him. I wanted to look like the woman who had been there through everything. So I went out and bought a dress. Not just any dress. Something elegant, tailored, timeless. Something that said, "I belong here." 2 nights before the wedding, I stood in the living room, adjusting the fabric, smoothing invisible wrinkles. "What do you think?" I asked, turning toward him. Daniel was sitting on the couch, his phone in his hand. His thumb stopped mid-scroll when he looked up at me. For a moment, I thought I saw something in his eyes. Not admiration, Not pride. Something else. Something uneasy. It's fine, he said finally. Fine. I waited. For a compliment. For anything. It didn't come. It's very you, he added. I frowned slightly. What does that mean? He shrugged, already looking back at his phone. I don't know, it's just safe. Safe? There it was again. I felt something twist quietly in my chest, but I smiled anyway, because that's what I had been doing for a long time. Smiling, while slowly realizing I was no longer the person he was proud to stand next to. And deep down, I think I already knew something was about to break. I just didn't know yet that it would be me. The conversation about the wedding didn't happen right away. It lingered, hovered in the air between us like something neither of us wanted to touch, but both of us knew was there. The next evening, I found him in the living room again. Same spot, same posture, phone in hand. But this time, there was tension in his shoulders. The kind that told me he'd already made a decision. He just hadn't said it out loud yet. So, I said, leaning against the doorway, what's the plan for Saturday? He didn't answer immediately. His thumb stopped scrolling. The room went quiet. Too quiet. Daniel locked his phone and placed it face down on the coffee table. That was when I knew. Something was wrong. Olivia, he started, dragging my name out like it weighed something. About the wedding. I felt my stomach tighten. Yeah? He exhaled slowly, like he was preparing himself. I've been talking to my parents. I frowned slightly. Okay, is everything all right with Emma? Emma's fine, he said quickly. Too quickly. It's just the guest list. I stepped further into the room, arms folding instinctively. The guest list? He nodded, but his eyes didn't quite meet mine. It's tight, and they've been making some comments. A strange chill ran through me. Comments about what? That's when he finally looked at me. And I saw it. Not guilt. Not concern. Something worse. Justification. About you, he said. The words landed softly, but they hit hard. About me, I repeated, slower this time. And Tara. There it was. A name that hadn't been spoken in over 2 years. A ghost suddenly dragged back into the room. My chest tightened. Why are they talking about her? I asked quietly. Daniel leaned back, rubbing the back of his neck. Because she was memorable. I stared at him. Memorable? He hesitated, then pushed forward like he'd already committed to the narrative. She had energy, Olivia. She lit up a room. I didn't respond. I just watched him. Because suddenly, I wasn't listening to what he was saying. I was listening to what he wasn't saying. And what he wasn't saying was everything. They think you're great, he added quickly. They do. They really do. That hollow reassurance. The kind that always comes right before the truth. But, I asked. He sighed. But they think you're a bit of a safe choice. The words settled between us. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Dangerous. A safe choice, I repeated. He nodded, almost defensively now. They just think going from Tara to you is a shift. A shift, I echoed. He didn't correct it. Didn't soften it. Didn't try to reframe it. So I did it for him. A downgrade, I said. Silence. He didn't deny it. And somehow, that hurt more than if he had. That's how they see it, he said finally, his voice sharpening. I'm just telling you what they said. I let out a quiet breath. It felt strange, like something inside me was disconnecting. Slowly, cleanly. So, he continued, his tone changing. Lower now, quieter, like he was trying to be reasonable. I don't want to put you in a situation where you're uncomfortable. Uncomfortable. I almost laughed. I don't want you sitting there all night knowing they're comparing you to her, he added. It'll be awkward. For you. For me. For everyone. For you. For me. For everyone. He said it like he was protecting me. But the truth was, he was protecting himself. For my sake, he finished, barely above a whisper. And honestly, for yours, I think it's better if I go alone. There it was. The moment everything shifted. You're uninviting me, I said. Not a question. A fact. To your sister's wedding. He flinched slightly. I'm trying to protect you, he insisted, standing up now, his tone rising. Why are you making this so difficult? I stared at him. Because suddenly, it was so clear. I'm protecting you from my mom, he continued. She's going to be drunk. She's going to be critical. And I can't manage your insecurity on top of everything else I have to deal with. My insecurity. That one almost made me smile. Not because it was funny, but because it was so precise. So perfectly placed to shift the blame. I see, I said softly. And I did. Not in the way he wanted me to, but in the way that changes everything. I saw a man who had rewritten his past, who had turned chaos into something romantic, who had taken stability and labeled it as boring. I saw a man who wasn't ashamed of what he used to be. He was ashamed of what he had become. And I was part of that. Fine, I said. The word came out calm. Too calm. He blinked, clearly not expecting that. Really? Yeah, I replied. If your parents think I'm a downgrade, I shouldn't be there. Relief flooded his face. Immediate, unfiltered. And that hurt more than anything else he had said. Thank you, he exhaled, stepping closer, placing a light kiss on my cheek. You're being really mature about this. Mature. Logical. Easy. That's what I was to him. That's why we worked. Because I didn't make things messy. Because I didn't make things hard. Because I didn't make him choose. Yeah, I said quietly. Logical. That night he barely looked at me. He was busy. Packing. Texting. Moving around the apartment like his life was happening somewhere else. And I was just in the background. The next afternoon, he dragged his suitcase to the door. I'm going to stay at the hotel tonight, he said. Help Emma with prep. I nodded. Okay. I'll see you Sunday, he added. A pause. Then, almost out of habit, love you. I looked at him, at the man I had spent 2 years building a life with. And for a second, I wondered if he even knew what that meant anymore. Bye, Daniel, I said. He hesitated. Just a fraction. Then he turned and left. The door clicked shut behind him. I stood there for a moment, listening. To his footsteps. To the silence. To the absence. Then I walked to the window, watched as he stepped outside. An Uber pulled up. He opened the door. And that's when I saw it. He wasn't alone. From 3 floors up, I couldn't see everything clearly. But I didn't need to. The way she moved. The way she leaned forward. The way she laughed. I knew. Tara. Of course. Of course it was her. I stood there, my hand resting against the cold glass. And suddenly, everything made sense. He didn't uninvite me to protect me. He didn't uninvite me because of his parents. He uninvited me because he was bringing her. The realization didn't hit like an explosion. There was no screaming, no tears, no dramatic collapse. It was quieter than that. Colder, like a switch flipping, like a system shutting down. I turned away from the window slowly, looked around the apartment, my apartment, the couch I paid for, the TV I bought, the life I built. And for the first time in 2 years, it didn't feel like home. It felt like something temporary, something borrowed, something that had already ended. Downgrade, I whispered. The word didn't hurt anymore. It clarified things. I walked into the bedroom, opened the closet, pulled out my duffel bag, and that's when I made the decision. I wasn't going to be here when he got back. Once the decision was made, everything inside me went still. Not numb, not broken. Still, like the moment right before a storm changes direction. I stood in the middle of the bedroom with the duffel bag in my hand and realized something strange. I wasn't panicking. I wasn't asking myself if I was overreacting. I wasn't rehearsing excuses for him. That was new. For 2 years, I had been translating Daniel for himself, softening his edges, reframing his selfishness into stress, his distance into exhaustion, his ingratitude into confusion. I had spent so long making him easier to love that I never stopped to ask whether he had become harder to respect. Now, with Tara in that car and his lie still hanging in the air like perfume after someone leaves the room, respect was the first thing to go. I gave myself 2 hours. That felt fair. Enough time to leave with dignity. Enough time to separate what was mine from what had only been mine in practice. I started with the essentials. Clothes, toiletries, laptop, charger, passport, birth certificate, banking folder, the envelope of emergency cash in the back of the safe, the one I had contributed almost all of, even though we used to jokingly call it our disaster fund. I remember staring at that envelope for a second too long. Disaster fund. Apparently, I had been saving for this without knowing it. Then came the electronics. This part felt less like revenge and more like accounting. The 65-inch OLED television in the living room? Mine. The sound system? Mine. The gaming console he played on after dinner while I answered work emails? Mine. The tablet. The portable projector. The high-end coffee machine he bragged about to guests as if he had some special eye for design. Mine, mine, mine. I moved carefully. No slammed drawers, no shattered glass, no dramatic mess. That wasn't who I was. That was who Tara was. That was the kind of woman Daniel mistook for passion. I wrapped cords neatly, stacked remotes together, packed everything the way I pack everything, organized, labeled in my head, practical even when my heart was trying to bleed somewhere beneath the surface. But the real severing point wasn't the TV. It was the internet. The account was in my name, always had been. I had set it up when we moved in together because Daniel's credit had still been recovering and he'd laughed, kissed my forehead and said, "Good thing one of us is responsible." At the time, it felt affectionate, Now it sounded like an unpaid invoice. I walked over to the modem and the mesh router system in the corner of the living room. The tiny lights blinked softly, holding together the smart thermostat. The lights, the streaming services, the speakers, the locks, every invisible convenience that made the apartment run smoothly. A digital nervous system. My system. I unplugged it all, one by one. The smart lights went dead. The voice assistant fell silent. The thermostat disconnected. The apartment didn't become empty. But it did become honest. I stood there for a second, router in my hand, and looked around. His jacket was still thrown over the dining chair. Emma's wedding program mock-up was sitting half-folded on the counter. A coffee mug with a lipstick-shaped chip on the handle sat in the sink from that morning. A normal life, at least from a distance. Funny how betrayal rarely looks dramatic up close. Most of the time, it looks like someone's shoes by the door and a blanket still folded on the couch. I took one final walk through the apartment. Bedroom, bathroom, hallway, kitchen. No note. A note would have invited interpretation. He would have read it 3 different ways, forwarded pictures of it to people, maybe even cried over the parts that made him look bad and ignored the rest. No, I left my key on the kitchen counter. That said enough. By the time I loaded the last suitcase into my car, the sun was beginning to lower, warm gold against concrete. Somewhere across town, people were dressing for a wedding. Somewhere across town, Daniel was probably adjusting his tie while Tara smirked into a mirror. I drove to a Marriott downtown and checked in under my own name. When the receptionist asked, "Just one guest?" I nearly laughed. Yes, finally. Just one guest. My room was on the 10th floor. Clean, cold, quiet in the way expensive hotel rooms always are, like even the silence has been professionally arranged. I set my bags down, kicked off my shoes, and sat on the edge of the bed. It was 4:30 p.m. The ceremony would be starting. I imagined Daniel standing near the altar, wearing that practiced smile people use when they want their life to look better than it feels. I imagined Tara somewhere in the crowd, probably loving every second of the discomfort she caused just by existing. And I imagined his parents looking around for me, confused, maybe disappointed, maybe not for the reasons he claimed. I ordered dinner to the room. Steak, a whiskey, no dessert. Then I waited. At 7:15, my phone lit up on the nightstand. Robert calling. Daniel's father. I stared at the screen until the ringing almost ended. Then I picked up. Hello? Olivia. Robert sounded winded, shaken, like he had stepped outside to escape smoke. Oh, thank God. Are you okay? I sat up straighter. I'm fine. Why? There was a pause. Then he asked, Are you at the hospital? The question was so absurd that for a second I thought I had misheard him. The hospital? Yes, he said quickly. Daniel told us you collapsed. Something neurological, maybe a seizure, maybe your heart. He wasn't clear. He said you insisted he still come to the wedding because you didn't want to ruin Emma's day. I didn't speak. For one sharp, electric second, all I could hear was the blood pounding in my ears. He hadn't just lied. He had made me sick to excuse my absence. He had turned me into a tragic little story so he could parade Tara around in public without taking full responsibility for it. I stood and walked slowly toward the window, city lights glowing beneath me. Robert, I said, keeping my voice even, I did not collapse. I am not in the hospital. I'm at a hotel. His silence on the other end was thick enough to lean on. A hotel? He repeated. Yes. Then why aren't you here? I looked out over the city and decided in that moment that I was done protecting Daniel from the truth. Because your son uninvited me yesterday, I said calmly. He told me you and your wife thought I was a downgrade from Tara, that I was boring, that my being there would make you uncomfortable. What? Robert barked, so loud I pulled the phone slightly from my ear. That's insane. He also implied he was doing me a favor by leaving me home. Olivia, no, Robert said immediately. Absolutely not. I never said anything like that. Diane never said that either. God, she complains about everything, but not that. Tara is a walking rash. I wouldn't let that girl water my plants. Despite myself, I almost smiled. Then he said, voice turning colder, She's here. I closed my eyes. Of course she was. He brought her? Yes, Robert snapped. She's sitting at your table, in your seat, eating your meal. Daniel said she came because he needed emotional support. I laughed then. A small, tired laugh. Not because it was funny. Because there are moments when the truth becomes so shameless, laughter is the only sound left. I see, I said. Olivia, what the hell is going on? He demanded. Because from where I'm standing, my son looks like a damn fool, and that woman is flirting with Emma's new brother-in-law between bites of filet mignon. That image landed with perfect cruelty. Tara, of course, wouldn't waste a good wedding. I took a sip of whiskey and let it burn all the way down. What's going on, I said, is that Daniel wanted to see if there was still something there with her, and he didn't want me in the room while he found out. Robert swore under his breath. Then more quietly, almost sadly, Olivia. I moved out, I told him. He went silent again. I packed my things this afternoon. I'm done. Don't do that, he said immediately. Please. He's stupid. He's emotional. He panics and makes messes when he feels cornered. Let me get him out here. Let me drag him outside if I have to. We can fix this. I leaned my forehead lightly against the cool hotel glass. Down below, headlights slipped through intersections in orderly lines, each car headed somewhere with more certainty than I had felt in months. There's nothing to fix, Robert. You don't mean that. I do, because I did. For the first time since meeting Daniel, I wasn't measuring his intentions. I wasn't balancing his wounds against my own. I wasn't trying to decide whether his behavior was understandable. Understandable didn't matter anymore. It happened. He did it. And somewhere along the way, the why had become less important than the fact that I could no longer trust the person telling it to me. He didn't just betray me, I said softly. He was ashamed of me, and he was willing to humiliate me to make room for her. Robert exhaled hard, like a man trying not to break something in public. In the background, I could hear faint music, laughter, glassware, the strange, polished noise of a party still pretending to be elegant while something rotten spread beneath it. Then he muttered, I swear to God, he's over there trying to charm Emma's father-in-law while Tara is 2 drinks deep and talking about launching a wellness brand. That one made me smile for real. A bitter smile. Perfect. Tell Emma I'm sorry I missed her wedding, I said. I will. And tell Daniel. I stopped. Not because I had nothing to say. Because I suddenly realized I didn't owe him a perfect line. Still, after a moment, I found one. Tell him if I'm such a downgrade, I said, then he's free to upgrade permanently. Robert was quiet. Then, very low, he doesn't deserve you. No, I said, he doesn't. We hung up. I turned my phone off completely after that. No texts, no calls, no explanations. Sunday passed in a kind of clean, unfamiliar peace. I slept late, ran by the river, ate dinner alone with a book open beside my plate. And the strangest part was this. I didn't feel abandoned. I felt released. As if somewhere inside me, a load-bearing wall had finally been removed, not from my life, but from the version of it I had been trapped inside. And gravity? Gravity was about to do the rest. I kept my phone off for 24 hours. No curiosity. No temptation. No late-night weakness, where I'd scroll through messages and start negotiating with my own boundaries. Just silence. Clean, uninterrupted silence. Sunday felt different. Not empty. Not lonely. Just mine. I woke up late, sunlight spilling across the hotel sheets in a way that felt unfamiliar, like I hadn't slept that deeply in months. I went for a run along the river, the cold air cutting through my lungs, grounding me in something real. No texts, no calls, no one asking where I was, what I was doing, if I could pick something up on the way home. Just me, and for the first time in 2 years. That was enough. I had dinner alone at the hotel bar that night. Ordered steak again. Ordered wine this time instead of whiskey. Opened a book I hadn't had the mental space to read in months. And somewhere between the first chapter and the second, I realized something. I wasn't waiting for him. Not for a text. Not for an apology. Not even for closure. Because closure had already happened. He had given it to me the moment he chose her. Monday morning, I turned my phone back on. That was when reality came rushing in. The screen lit up like a warning signal. 47 missed calls, 82 text messages, 12 voicemails. Most of them from Daniel. A few from Emma. 2 from his mother. I didn't listen to the voicemails. I didn't need to. The story was already written. I scrolled through the messages slowly, reading just enough to understand the pattern. 1:03 a.m. Where are you? 1:17 a.m. This isn't funny, Olivia. 2:42 a.m. Why is the TV gone? 3:10 a.m. Pick up the phone. My dad is furious. What did you say to him? 9:06 a.m. You embarrassed me last night. Do you have any idea what you've done? 4:21 p.m. Baby, please. Let's just talk. 8:02 p.m. The Wi-Fi is out. Seriously? You took the router? That's petty. Monday, 6:11 a.m. I messed up. I need you. Please call me. I paused there. That last one. Simple, direct, honest, in the way people are when they're out of options. The progression was textbook. Confusion, anger, blame, minimization, desperation. I locked the screen, archived the thread, and went to work. She found me that evening, 5:30 p.m. Parking garage. I had just finished work, keys in hand, walking toward my car when I saw her, leaning against the driver's side door, arms crossed, sunglasses hiding her eyes even though we were underground. For a second, I almost didn't recognize her. Not physically, but something about her energy had shifted. Smaller, less certain. Like the version of herself she had been trying to become had cracked under pressure. Then she saw me. And just like that, the defensiveness snapped back into place. "You blocked me," she said immediately. "No, hello. No apology. Just accusation." "I did," I replied, stopping a few feet away. "I didn't unlock the car. Didn't step closer." "What do you want, Daniel?" "I want you to come home," he said, his voice already starting to break. He pushed himself off the car and took a step toward me. "This is insane, Olivia. You don't just disappear like that. You don't move out because of a misunderstanding." I tilted my head slightly. "A misunderstanding?" "Yes," he said quickly. "You took everything way out of proportion. I was trying to protect you." There it was again. Protect. That word he used when he wanted to make something selfish sound generous. "So let me get this straight," I said calmly. "You told me your parents thought I was a downgrade so you could uninvite me. Then you brought your ex to your sister's wedding. Then you told your father I was in the hospital having a seizure to explain why I wasn't there." He flinched. That one hit. "Which part," I continued, "did I misunderstand?" Silence. He looked down. Then quieter. I panicked. I waited. "Tara texted me Friday night," he admitted. "She said she was going to be in town. She wanted to see me. Just talk. See if there was still something there." "Of course she did. And I needed closure," he said quickly, looking back up at me. "I needed to prove to myself that I was over her." I raised an eyebrow. "So you brought her as your date to a family wedding? To prove you were over her?" He winced. "When you say it like that, that's exactly how it is," I cut in. "It was a mistake," he said, voice cracking now. "A huge mistake. She was a disaster, Olivia. She got drunk, flirted with Emma's new brother-in-law, tried to pitch some ridiculous business idea to my dad during the reception. He almost threw her out." I said nothing, because none of that surprised me. "And then she left," he continued, swallowing hard, "with one of the groomsmen. Didn't even say goodbye to me. Just used me to get into the wedding." But there it was. The part that actually hurt him. Not losing me. Losing control of the narrative. "I'm sorry that happened to you," I said. "And I meant it. In the same way you feel sorry when someone touches a hot stove after you told them not to." "I know you were right," he said quickly, stepping closer. "I realized it the second she started talking. I missed you. I missed how steady you are. How you make me feel safe." Safe. There it was again. Not loved. Not valued. Safe. He reached for my hand. I stepped back. His fingers closed around empty air. "I need you, Olivia," he said, desperation finally bleeding through. "Please, just come home. The apartment is so quiet without you." Of course it was. "No TV," I said lightly. "No Wi-Fi." "I don't care about that," he said immediately. But we both knew that wasn't true. Not entirely. I care about us. I looked at him. Really looked at him. And for the first time, I saw it clearly. The fear in his eyes wasn't about losing me. It was about losing what I provided. The structure. The stability. The life he had grown used to standing inside. "Do you remember what you told me Friday night?" I asked. He hesitated. "No." "You said I was a downgrade." "I didn't mean that," he said quickly. "Yes," I replied softly. "You did." He shook his head, frustration rising. "You're twisting—" "No," I said, cutting him off again. "I'm understanding." He went still. "I am a downgrade," I continued calmly, "compared to Tara." He blinked, confused. "What?" "I pay bills," I said. "I show up. I don't cheat. I don't cause scenes at weddings. I don't disappear for days. That is boring to someone who's used to chaos." His expression shifted, from confusion to realization. "You don't want peace," I said. "You want excitement, highs and lows, uncertainty, drama. And when that burns you, you come back to me." "That's not true," he snapped. "It is," I said, "and I'm done being the place you land when everything else falls apart." "I want you," he shouted, losing control now. "Not her, not any of that. You." I shook my head slowly. "No," I said. "You want your rent covered, your life organized, your parents off your back. You want the benefits of stability without actually valuing it. That's not fair." "It's accurate." The silence that followed was heavy. Final. I unlocked my car. The beep echoed through the garage. "I'm sending movers on Saturday for the rest of my things," I said, opening the door. "I've already transferred the utilities out of my name. They'll shut off in 48 hours if you don't handle them." His face went pale. "You can't just leave me like this." I paused, then looked at him one last time. "I didn't leave you," I said. "I stopped holding everything up." That's the same thing, he shouted. No, I replied quietly. It's not. I got into the car, tossing my bag onto the passenger seat. He grabbed the door before I could close it. Please, he said, voice breaking completely now. I can't afford that place on my own. There it was. Finally. The truth. I know, I said. And I gently pulled the door from his hand. I took care of you, I added, starting the engine. I helped you get out of debt. I helped you build a life. You're in a better place now than when I found you. He stared at me, desperate, angry, lost. I put the car in reverse. Consider it a severance package. I pulled out of the parking space. He was still standing there, saying something, maybe shouting, maybe begging. I didn't hear it. The windows were up, and for the first time, so were my boundaries. As I drove up the ramp toward the sunlight, I checked the rearview mirror once. He looked smaller already, like something in my life that no longer fit the scale of who I was becoming. I turned on the radio. Music filled the car. Loud, alive, free. And for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like silence was something I needed to escape. It felt like something I had finally earned.